Hi, welcome to another episode of Be Positive with Ambi Parameswaran. I'm your host on the etbrandtree.com portal. So today I have someone who has spent a large part of his career in advertising, and now he's a CMO in one of India's hottest startups, an original unicorn, if you may call that, or multi-unicorn, whatever that is, that creature is called. So, welcome Mayur Hola to. Thank you for joining us on this show. Mayur is a head global branding of Oyo, and he has had a great career in advertising. Interestingly, with Havas. Before that, a long innings in contract, McCann Advertising, and of course, Ogilvy in Delhi. So, Mayur, thank you for joining me on this Be Positive show. Uh, I'm sure we have a lot of young viewers who will learn a lot from you about being positive, overcoming objections, and challenges as you go along. So, as we get started, I just want you to go back and talk about your education, where you started, where you grew up, any lasting impressions. I know that you studied in Air Force School and then in Delhi College of Arts. So tell us something about that.
Yeah, thanks, Ambi. Really good to talk to you. I've heard a lot, including your fascination for the Doors. Uh, that's for another chat, but yeah, that's a really nice introduction, and I hope I live up to half of it. I grew up. I'm a defense kid, right? Dad was in the Air Force. I grew up in Air Force stations, mostly Air Force stations around the country. Spent a good long period in the hills in Kasauli, and coincidentally, I actually went more to convents because my folks sort of felt that they should keep me away from all the other Army and Air Force brats. Greatly concerned by my nefarious activities, and as such, I was actually brought up more by nuns, and indeed my parents, of course, than Air Force schools. It's only really when I came to Delhi, invariably a lot of people, as they get senior in the forces, they get transported to Air Headquarters, Army Headquarters, and Naval Headquarters, respectively, and that's where I ended schooling. So yeah, that was amazing. That pretty much made me, I think, who I am.
So how come you didn't go into Air Force? Because I know a lot of Army kids and Air Force kids end up following their parents into into what they call the services, and you ended up becoming a civilian. What
Yeah,
a
look,
call!
I think Delhi Delhi might well have done that to me. To be honest, I did take the NDA like a lot of the kids, but I'm not sure I gave it a fair go. Probably should have been a little more focused on that. But I think at the time, my interests and where they were, yeah, probably took me towards the arts and writing and so on. I must admit, I had some great English teachers though, so I suspect they had a big influence on the calling I chose.
So you picked up, you went into, tried for Indigay, and then you gave that up, and then you went into Delhi College of Arts and Commerce, and not something more mundane like engineering or BCom or so how come? How come Delhi? I mean, why arts?
I think, look, I think arts is just incidentally the name of the college. I was quite clear that the closest I would get to engineering would probably be the merchant navy, and that too, I think the fascination was more, I must admit, a slightly X-rated teenage boy fascination with various sports
And the
and
Titanic, the impression Titanic made on you, and Kate Winslet, I'm sure, right?
think, yes, sort of, but yes, various sports did feature in it, as you know, the phrase is very very common, and I think that's really as close as I got to anything to do with engineering. I was fascinated. I read a lot. Again, I think when we moved to Delhi, and this is a small anecdote, I had an aunt who happened to own a bookstore, the kind of bookstores, I mean, we recall, which used to rent out books, right? You didn't
Nice.
buy a book. And it was just completely coincidentally located where we lived. So there was a shopping center. She had a little shop she was running. She was my dad's cousin, as a matter of fact. I had unlimited access to so much fiction, it's not funny. My mom used to have to tell her to like stop lending us books during our exam times and stuff, because all I was doing was reading, right? It's all we want our kids to do now, if you really think about it, because that's all they're doing is not reading,
Yeah.
right? So I think that left quite an impression on me, as it did on a generation of us, frankly, right? Uh, and I think that sort of led me towards English literature, which is what I did in college. And the college that I chose was Delhi College of Arts and Commerce, because they were kind enough to have me, frankly. And yeah, it was more English, to be honest, than arts. Having said that, I did sort of towards the end of my college also study computer graphics and animation. I indeed taught people computer graphics and animation, and worked in a game developing firm as an animator for a while before I finally migrated to McCann and my first advertising job as a writer.
So, so this fascination with writing started because you started reading, right? So, any specific favorite authors from your college or pre-college days or during college, or were you a author agnostic reader?
No, as with most people, I went through all the phases. The whole, of course, Enid Blyton was very early, and it was interesting to note the controversy that was going on recently. I still think, gingerbread is her greatest, achievement to make you feel
And
that
of
that's
course, I mean, I've always wondered whether the British kids only kept eating. I'm sure her writing contributed to a lot of childhood obesity all over the world. Yeah.
absolutely. And the fascination somehow, continues, like I said, seeps into your blood. So yeah, that was early. There was a Jeffrey Archer phase, which we've all had. The whole thriller phase. Ludlum, Robert Ludlum gets into your blood, of course, right? Then there's the whole risque phase with, James Hadley Chase, and indeed,
Harold Robbins, Carpetbaggers. Yeah.
course, I mean Harold Robbins, and I was avoiding that name, but thank you for bringing it up and reminding me. So yeah, I mean there was that whole phase, and then of course later now I think I mean and of all of them, of course, I must admit that the one gentleman who accompanied me throughout, and I go to when in doubt, remains Mr. Woodhouse.
Hmm.
And yeah, that of all of them, I have to admit, then and now remains a constant ally.
Yes, yes. We're talking about fiction, so I know you're the guest and you're going to talk a lot. But I remember I was flying back from Cochin to Mumbai, and I had and since you're also an Air Force kid, you'll find it amusing. So I had a Tom Clancy book. I forget which one, the second or the third. I don't know whether you've read Tom Clancy as an Air Force Navy kid.
Right.
Uh, you know, so I picked it up and I was reading it. I was somewhere halfway through it, and someone sitting next to me asked me, do you enjoy his reading? So I said, yeah, I do. So then he said, oh, great. I didn't know. So I said, why are you asking? He said, these books are recommended reading for us. I'm from the Indian Navy.
All right then.
He said, yeah. He said, yes. And we got talking for about half an hour about how his books are really cutting edge. And, they are like almost like non-fiction for them and they read it. So I was quite fascinated. I mean, during my time, I don't know Arthur Haley books were
Of course.
very educational to us, and of course, Frederick Forsyth and, all those, whatever, the books
Forsyth came much before Ludlum came. Forsyth is the real deal, right?
which one?
Forsyth, Frederick
Oh
Forsyth
yeah,
is.
yeah. Frederick Forsyth and Day of the Jackal is based on a so-called real life story, right? So, any role model from your college days?
Gee, I mean, I think it was, to be honest, it would have to be an author. And if I look back, I think, yeah, I would say, shallow or not, but Robert Ludlum had a pretty big influence on thought at the time. I would again bring up the good people that Jackie Collins and Harold Robbins are, but that was a completely different kind of influence. So
What about some flesh and blood person, someone who inspired you to get into advertising, or some uncle, aunt, cousin?
yeah, I think I met this gentleman, and for the life, I remember his second name now is Mr. Sahi. I remember right out of college, I felt I should learn a little bit more about, as you said, the fascination for writing was perhaps somewhere there right through, right. after reading so much. And I met Mr. Sahi, and he sort of took a class that prepared people for the Indian Institute of Mass Communication, right? I really just went to understand what it was all about, right? You see, you hear the stories, you have a certain fascination, think the business, as I call it, is going to be a certain way. But it's best to just ask someone who's been there. So I think a super interesting guy, has a lot of RL car, and I think him as an early influence on what might have brought me towards the business was one. He was an advertiser. He later became an educator. He used to get people prepared to get into the business or to get or take exams like IIMC. So that was that. Other than that, I have to admit, I mean, I go back to Woodhouse every single time as an author, and not many in my circle, to be honest, were into a business like this. So I can't like pinpoint someone I saw doing this as a natural transition. I think maybe I was just naturally a rebel, and I was destined not to do whatever was expected of me by perhaps the folks.
But why advertising? Why copywriting? There must
Yeah,
be someone who must have nudged you, or was it a lark that you said, "Let me go and try
I,
writing copy"?
I think I think Mad Men captures it. Not that I saw Mad Men then, but when I see Mad Men later, I think the aura of the business sort of pulls a lot of us in. So you realize you join the dots again, right? You like writing, you like reading, you feel like you have ideas. Your teenage mind tells you you're brilliant, even if you're stupid. Hopefully, I was not. And then there is the whole aura and romanticism of the business of advertising, and the men and the women there, and the color and the pomp and the grandeur. You meet someone, as I mentioned, who informs you more, and you're like, right, this is it. I'm going there. And I did. I sort of went into an agency just to see how it was.
Hmm.
I remember walking to McCann, and I wasn't even there in advertising then. I just met Ashish Chakravarti. I don't know if you know Ashish.
Yeah.
He's the only guy who gave me the time of the day, sat with me for half an hour, showed me some books, and said, this is what you're getting into. I'd walked through office. McCann was the best looking office, and I don't mean in a human way, I'd ever seen anywhere. I was,
Especially for a young lad, McCann must have had many attractions.
my God, I mean, what a place that was. In addition to Ashish giving me time and showing me some wonderful ads through the One Show, etc., one of which he had won, I was sold. I was in. That's all I needed.
Yeah, Ashish then went to contract, right? So,
Yes, I followed Ashish much later.
okay.
And we sort of, I think, I would like to believe, built contract together. Yeah, that was quite some time.
Anything you remember from your days uh, in ch- in McCann or contract, some challenge, a tough client, a campaign you had your heart on, which got bombed?
So a campaign which we have our hearts on would split us into pieces if we mention all of them, Ambi. I'm sure. So I mean, no, I mean, I think I sort of, I don't look back on things and feel too challenged. To be honest, I'll be honest with you. I just shrug it off and get going. But yeah, McCann was formative for me. Returned there thrice, and I like to say I'm a glutton for punishment for doing that. I was there in the time Costi was there, which was extremely colorful. Very off the record conversations, those will need to be. Uh, so, but Santosh Desai was as well, and I think a lot of our education as young people working in an agency was through people like Santosh, Ashish, and later I think yeah, I worked in the over there when Freddie was there for a brief period
Oh
of time.
wow! Have you been reading Freddie's stuff on Instagram?
Freddie is a friend. I was fortunate enough that he chose me to be a friend of his. I continue to be one from time to time. Uh, his impression on me again is huge in terms of, strangely enough, I don't know about writing for sure. He has a big impression on all of us, but I think food. If you meet Freddie outside of work, you'll realize Freddie is just so much about the food, and yeah, that's a huge impression. Later, I was there when Prasun was there, of course. The Prasun era, of course, continues,
Yeah,
and
that
that's
that will never end. Yeah.
I don't think so either. And that again, that's a different ball game.
It would have been interesting working with Santosh and then Freddie and Prasoon.
So diverse, right? I consider myself extremely fortunate, to be honest. And when you think, when you say setbacks, I feel maybe I deal with things so much for two reasons. One, my upbringing as a defense kid just prepares me for anything, right? Every 4 years, 2 years, depending on which service you are, you're traveling. Abandon everything you have, all your friends or your school, go on to the next place, right? So really, I mean, what are you going to throw at us? Really, we're all set for the world in a lot of ways. Then you meet such a diverse set of personalities and skills and knowledge. Santosh is Santosh, and Santosh is a different being altogether, right? From Hofstede to Brahminical restraints to all things Santosh, my God, right? That's university. Freddie by himself is just pure talent, right? And that is a gift that keeps on giving to people even today. A generation that did not know writing is suddenly exposed to some brilliant stuff that he puts out. And of course, Prasoon is brilliant in his own right with the work he does and in how he processes things, and the control he exerts over a place is something to observe and learn. And yeah, I think that sort of prepares me for who I am and what I do in a lot of ways.
So, if you were to pick someone from your advertising days as you saw as a mentor, as someone you learned a lot from, do you have any particular person you want to name, or is it the triumvirate? Or
Yeah, I mean, you this would be someone from your part of the world or where you might have originated from, which is Chennai, Nandu Narasimhan. Nandu Narasimhan was a low creative director who later, when I first moved from McCann, I was destined to go towards, actually, I was meant to go towards Ogilvy. But
Mhm.
en route, I met Nandu at contract, and he swung me there for a song. You know, Ogilvy was giving me a nice raise. Nandu being Nandu, there's a phrase that goes along with Nandu, says Nandu sabka bandhu,
Uh-huh.
and that is true. So once you meet Nandu, there is no way you can deny Nandu. Frankly, right? He's got you. So he got me for a song to contract, followed him to Grey thereafter. And I think, again, huge impression. Just such a vibrant guy. Tambram boy, like I said, played on matting wickets in Chennai, raised with music, although he went the Western music way.
Mhm.
Extremely well read, extremely erudite, extremely knowledgeable about whatever he decided he was getting into. It wasn't that he was not the kind of person who would skim over stuff, right? A lot of us advertising people tend to just know a lot about many things, right? Nandu knew a lot about a lot.
Yeah, it is, in advertising, people are largely dilly dally in many things, and we don't go deep into
Yeah,
most things. Of course, I think Nandu is an exception. So is Santosh in his own way an exception who's pretty deep on many areas, right? It's not just one area. You can sit and discuss, um, religion with him. You can sit and discuss food. You can sit and discuss. So Nandu, where is Nandu now?
Unfortunately, Nandu left us early. He suffered, I believe, a cardiac arrest. We never fully understood what happened, but he left us early, and yeah, that his aura though lives on. I think perhaps it's due to him that I'm able to perform as I perform in a place that is so data oriented, and you do really need to get very deep into whatever you're doing. And I think perhaps him and Ashish is also a very strategic bent of mine. I think would have a huge influence on how I am now.
Yeah, that's the breed of creative directors, right? Who can actually think strategy as well as write. I mean, you have Ashish for one. I know Ramki is that variety. So is Chax, who worked, we closely worked for about 6 years.
Right.
He can outthink strategy with me and question me. So it was a great one. So okay, so you seem to have had a very good time in advertising. You don't have too many battle wounds which many advertising copywriters, creative directors carry. I've written a lot about many of those wounds in many of my books. But now, tell me, how did you switch to the other side? And also, before you say that, let me also say, at least for the viewers here, that in job hierarchy, the lowest is really the media, the space selling types, and they then grow up to join advertising. Okay, and then the guys in advertising want to grow up and join a client, right? So I've done that. I've started advertising, went into client, and then came back into advertising. So
Right.
what got you into marketing side?
Look, one thing I think today, or at least when Cannes happens again, the yachts closest to the Palai are the ones which are media houses now. So that came back to bite us. They took over and indeed sold creativity to hell. I think I think a lot of us probably wanted to transition out of advertising and towards really owning a brand more than being a client, frankly, simply because it was no longer possible to do that where we were. Right, we were commoditized, we were undercoated, undercut, and I do believe scattered. Although the large advertising agencies continue to provide a lot of value and are true partners. I think people like Balki, who set up Low, and Prasun, Piyush, Leo Burnett, a lot of the big ones we know about, continue to be a true partner to a lot of brands. But I feel a lot of the mid-rung agencies and indeed the smaller ones, it's just scattered, and clients basically marketing people are basically at a point where they don't know. If you don't have a large budget, look, you're really just shopping around looking for the best ideas for your brand, right? And that is available to you at all price points. As such, being in one of those agencies and really owning a brand as we used to was no longer possible. So as such, I think the move is more deliberate and thought through to be part of a brand, own it, own every aspect of it, and be able to have a transformative effect, a truly transformative effect that you were able to do earlier, and you're no longer able to do while being in the business, as I call it.
I think it's a good point you're making here that at one time you have strong ownership of brands, even in the agency side, that the client calls and asks you for advice on pricing, on composition, on brand hierarchy, etc. Now maybe, but how did you land up in Oyo? Was it serendipity, or was it because they were your client and they got to know you and they were impressed? What
Yeah,
happened?
I just about joined Havas a few months ago. Right, I was all in. I was national creative director for Havas. It had been a few months. I knew Rana very well, of course, and so on. And one fine day, I had a message come through on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn does work for some people. Like it never worked for me before. Worked for
Yeah.
them, I guess. And then global brand head reached out to me, and it was a lady called Monica, who wanted to meet me, had checked out my stuff, and so on, and had been looking for a while to find someone. She told me, and once she'd found maybe my website, I think she found it interesting, and yeah, just came out of the blue, to be honest. And like I said, I'd been thinking about doing this for a while, for the reasons I mentioned. And yeah, I jumped at meeting her and met Mandy, who's our chief strategic officer as well. And I think meeting him really just convinced me that this was a place buzzing with energy. It was the kind of places we were used to 2 decades ago when we first came into the business. Floor after floor of people just buzzing and creating, and everyone in a lot of these places, particularly Oyo, is creating something, and they truly are. It's not just something that's sold to you. You're creating a new idea, a new business idea, a new creative idea. It could be whatever, and it's just anyone can come, and it's open forum for them to do so. And as such, I think that attracted me a lot.
You took the chance and jumped out of advertising after what? Spending 15 years in advertising, 20 years?
2 decades.
Wow, 20 years. All right. So, let me share my own thing. When I moved from advertising to marketing, I'm talking of a long time back, when you're probably in kindergarten, in
Thank you for making me feel young.
82, 83. Yeah, I found marketing boring.
Right.
I joined a British pharmaceutical company. I had 3 brands to handle, and I had to do things to fill my day. It was not as if clients were calling, the telex coming, and those are the days before email. So telex as phone calls. Uh, I found it little too sedate. So how is it for you moving after 20 years as a creative director, handling multiple brands, multiple big teams, completely unruly kids, and then getting into a marketing job, of course.
Well,
Vio is not your typical pharmaceutical multinational. Yeah.
yeah, I think a legacy brand may not have worked as well for me. I was quite sure about that. So as such, when this came, like you said, serendipity, this was perfect for me. A startup which is a lot more active, a lot more chaotic, if you want to use that word, and as such, a lot more familiar for us. Right? We're born in chaos, frankly. I got a few of those kids along with me so that I didn't miss out that energy. My creative is led by a guy I know for almost a decade now. Right? He's worked with me as such. So yeah, I brought a few familiar faces, came to a familiar energy, and in terms of the whole aspect of working on various brands across various categories. Look, one of the things I did do was read up quite a lot on what Oyo had been up to, and once you do that, you realize that when you lead global brand here, you work on various geographies which are very different to each other. In some ways, they're very similar. Indonesia will behave very similarly to India, right? But equally, US is very different. Our whole vacation home business in Europe, across Europe, extremely different. We do less work here to be honest than we do here. But there are a whole diverse set of categories, from budget hotels to 3, 4, 5 star hotels to homes, which are vacation homes in India, and as I mentioned, in other continents and other geographies indeed. So as such, once you get very deep into a brand, as you well know as a marketing person, there's just so much that you can do. And especially when you go into a place which is setting up almost everywhere, or has recently set up, there's a lot of things to fix. And that's exciting for me, to be honest. I mean, I think a lot of us were just done with saying, okay, what's the next film we're making? I didn't come here to make films. I was done making films. I can probably make films in my sleep sometime. I felt it's not that easy, of course, to make a good one. But yeah, it really was. By the time I left the business, I was more into solving problems, and they happen to be business or product problems. And I think that again is another thing that drew me into a place like that, which has a lot of these problems to solve, and is setting up new things.
So you work in a modern, digital first kind of a brand, and from what I understand, these are all full of nerds. A number is, it's all numbers, 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 and every minute you're tracking what is happening, and you're changing stuff, you're changing creative, you're changing strategy. How you adjusted to the new world of analytics and numbers, and you're a BA lit guy, right? And you can't do your Fourier transforms or your, multivariate analysis or econometric modeling. So how are you
I
swimming in the sea of numbers?
I learned. I taught myself to learn the numbers, and I truly believe this. I think if we understand numbers and are able to apply our thought process and creativity to them, I think the results we come up with are unexpected and transformative. Again, that's a word I use often. Whereas if you were to look at numbers and in a very linear way and say, okay, this is what is working for us, a lot of young people stay with us, sales force stays with us, let's just keep doubling down on it. There's a certain finiteness to that, even in a geography like ours. I think one, yes, you learn how to analyze numbers here. There is no option, like you said. There are a lot of data junkies, nerds or not, and you become one as well. I'm refraining from using a lot of data in our chat, but yeah, I think if you bring your strength to it, and we're very conscious of sticking to our strength, we find that we're able to solve problems. We can give a couple of examples of them by means of whatever we've learned over the last 2 decades, and we do it
Well,
well.
so let me ask you a question which which I've discussed with several other people who are in so-called digital brands, which is they say that a digital marketer understands performance marketing,
Right.
doesn't understand brand marketing.
Right.
Whereas your classical ad agency type, like you and me, we understand brand marketing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't understand performance marketing,
Right.
and the twain shall never meet. So
Yeah, look,
you made the transition. So tell us.
it's not far off, but it's possible to do as long as you make sure. I think we have a very supportive ecosystem. Number one, I'm able to keep the fundamentals the same. The thought process is that just because you lower down the funnel and you have more intent doesn't mean I should pardon the French, but doesn't mean I should serve up shit. You're still a consumer who consumes what a brand is communicating, for God's sake, right? So one of the jobs we do have is to make sure that our performance marketing mirrors the tone of voice and indeed the quality of what we traditionally refer to as brand marketing. In fact, we break down those walls and say everything is marketing.
Yeah, but
Right?
problem is, I mean, obviously you're different, but problem is when I talk to my friends who are in the ad agency business, today every client wants 3 posts to be created every day,
Right?
right, on their LinkedIn and Insta, and how can you create 3 posts a day which can satisfy even tick even one of the 20 boxes? No, 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 no. Coca-Cola, Ronaldo, I want something. No, 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 no. Sherni movie is coming out. I want something. I mean, I think, especially during lockdown, and I have this theory that during lockdown, these brand managers are all stuck at home. So otherwise, they are out in the field, traveling in rural India, getting a nice sunburn. Now they're sitting at home and really giving a sunburn to all their agencies.
Look, I think there's two different landscapes, Ambi, and I think here's how we process social. And since we migrated from performance to social. Number one, no, in the way we process it, there are no walls between all of them. And number two, we still apply the old fundamentals. You remember the time when we used to get square size small ads in newspapers, right?
Yep.
Think about it. That's what Instagram is today. If you really want to think about it, like, of course there are rules and that apply. There are you change according to the medium. You think according to
No,
times.
but that is the problem, Mayur. The problem is in the good old days, you create that little ad. You have to put it through all those metrics, right?
Yes.
And to make sure it ticks all the boxes. Before that, it is not released. Today, some kid sitting in some digital agency is creating stuff and putting it on your
Right.
Insta handle or Twitter handle or wherever. Now, ideally, you're creating actually an ad.
Yes. Yes.
Who controls quality?
Us. We do. We have a social media agency, a very good one, but we look at everything. We have a agency which helps us with performance marketing. We look at everything. We create the templates. We make sure there are buckets given according to which we communicate, as opposed to leaving it random. Yes, moment marketing comes, and we participate if we feel there is some connect with our brand. If there isn't, we don't participate. It doesn't make sense to ladder onto everything that's happening. Fevicol did Ronaldo very well, good for them. We didn't even touch it. It didn't make sense for us to get in on it, right?
Yeah.
So yes, we have to be the filter. We are ultimately the litmus that you must pass through. You're right. It is brand. It is communication. It doesn't matter which medium, size, performance, social, TV. It is all communicating to your audience. You hope for engagement in one case with social. You hope for action in the other case with performance. You hope for adding more to the top of the funnel with traditional, if you want to call it that, or digital, or whatever the hell else you want to call it. But it is one brand, and if one team is deeply embedded and responsible for every single part of it, then you make sure everything is on brand. Will you drop the ball sometimes just because of the proliferation that is there? You're absolutely right. The attempt is not to drop it even once. We hope we succeed more times than not.
Yeah, it's a big. I mean, it's a big challenge. So I think we're kind of coming to the end of our time here. So let me ask, what advice would you like to give to youngsters who are starting out on their career during this COVID affected period?
I'm so unqualified to give advice. Look at me. But I think this is a good time. Again, these are, as people say, unprecedented times, and all those words are thrown, right. But I think these times prepare you for anything. Again, it's not your usual time, right? So you learn things that you might not have learned before. We're having this chat almost as if we were next to each other. Not quite, no alcohol, as we said, but here we go. This digitization has happened at the speed of light, frankly, or the speed of time over here. And the things kids will learn, which they already knew, to be honest, they were already on their phones. They're more so now than ever. But I do believe there will be a cycle that they need to go through. One, how to deal with anything through a device. Two, how to leave the device the hell alone and go out and experience the world once you're done with this, because that is what's going to teach you how to deal with the rest of your life, right? Jargon won't, my gyan won't, no one else's gyan will. These are the two things. One has got accelerated and you're doing it. Two, you better do once all of this is over so that you can go and experience the stuff you've been browsing through because it's not the same thing.
Great. So, in your in your mind, what does it take to be a successful marketing person? Now you're a crowned marketing person. You're on the show. So this is a show for young CMOs, high achieving CMOs. So you're no longer a copywriting hack. You are a respected CMO. So tell us what it takes.
Never, Prasun used to say, "Kalam se kabhi nata mat todna." So, kalam se kabhi nata mat todna. If you have a strong suit, stick to it. Never leave it. Religiously stick to it. Be fearless. It's a crown of thorns. Do not take it for granted because everything comes and lands on your head. Ultimately, it's all on you. So be fearless. You may as well make mistakes because if you're trying to get everything right and please everyone, you're going to achieve nothing. These are really the only two things I have to say.
So super. I think that's kind of is the ethos of the show, just to be positive, right? I mean, do whatever you can, but be positive. You'll be hit by rejections. You'll be hit by failures. You'll be hit by challenges. But be positive. So let me now end by asking a few rapid fire questions. Which is your favorite ad ever, not created by you?
Wow, so tough. Guinness, the horses.
Horses. Okay, that's a horses coming in from the sea, right? That's the one.
Right.
Yeah.
Epic.
Guinness is for those who wait. Yeah. Right. Great. Okay. One ad which is your favorite, which is created by you.
Can I take two? Panvilas just for the writing because such a tough category to write for with Manoj Bajpayee. Chalk Badi Cheez. Worked with Riyazat Bhai on it and that was amazing. Recently, for Oyo, it's not advertising, frankly, that we've done, but we make sure we attract a certain kind of audience which likes to make lewd comments towards women. We make sure we slap the hell out of them and we pin it up for everyone to see. And 90% of the times they run. I think it's the most worthy work I've ever done, frankly.
Oh, great. I actually quite liked your ad today in the paper about, take your dad and hire a Hola room and, shout and whatever, I thought it was interesting play. Okay. Your favorite movie?
Black Hawk Down. Black Hawk Down.
Okay. Favorite book?
Yeah. Favorite book? Anything by P.G. Woodhouse, as long as it has Jeeves and Wooster, I'm in.
And favorite music album?
Oh, varies every single day, but Floyd is always a good bet. When in doubt, Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah, great. I mean, today there was some news item in some paper about a Mizoram girl's connection with one of the Pink Floyd. Sid Barrett was inspired by a Mizo girl.
I'll look that up.
Yeah, it's interesting. Since you're also a Pink Floyd junkie, you can look it up. One holiday destination you don't mind going to again?
Two, actually, Portugal and Japan. But if you put a gun to my head, Japan.
Japan during the season,
yeah, I mean cherry blossom season, Hanami. Winter. Take me to Japan anytime. As long as there's sake, I'm coming.
Sake, okay. We were there during the cherry blossom season. It's one of our best holidays we've had, and it's very tough to time it during the cherry blossom season. So we were lucky. In fact, favorite hotel in the world, not including Oya. Yeah, favorite hotel in the world you stayed in.
Oh gosh, I actually stayed at a cabana at a beach in Portugal. It's actually a home, and perhaps that's why I remember it so well.
Nice, that's interesting. Good answer. Okay. And finally, some last bit of advice to young marketing professionals who are watching this show.
Freddie gave great advice. Get out there and kiss someone, watch a movie, smell the roses if you have to, do nothing, lie on grass, get out of the pixels. Seriously, there's life out there.
Great. So Mayur, thank you very much for your time. And I think we can keep going on and on because you got a lot of interesting things to share. But thank you very much for coming on the show.
So cool.
And let me wish everyone stay safe, get yourself vaccinated, and thank you. And this is your host Ambi Parameswaran signing off on the Be Positive Show on etbrandequity.com.